एष सुप्तेषु जागृति य एष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तदेव शुक्रदब्रह्मा तदब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनाद्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you, members. So first of all, on behalf of WRC, I welcome all the members today. We welcome our WRC chairman, CA Saurabh Ajmera. We welcome CA Vijendra Jain, regional council member of WRC. Before starting the session, I would request CA Vijay sir to please hand over a flower bouquet to Vijendra sir as a mark of appreciation. Vijendra sir, please. Vijay sir. Vijay sir. We welcome Vijendra sir. Now I would request Ravi Soni to please offer a memento as well as a flower bouquet to our WRC chairman Saurabh Ajmera along with Nihar sir. So ideally, as a protocol, we were supposed to introduce our RCM and chairman, but due to shortage of time, so they have requested that it should not be taken because it is a WRC event and we are one from you only. So that was the thing. Secondly, now I would welcome our today's first speaker, CA Nihar sir. So I would now request Dilip Fadke sir to please come over along with Ravi to please momento le आओ momento আছে না sir no उधर ही momento to felicitate our दिलीप सर. आपके सेमिनार में सर नहीं आए थे ना, तो अभी आपसे फेलिसिटेशन करवा रहे हैं. Before starting the session, I would request CA Saurabh Ajmera to have some few words.
Good evening, one and all. Dignitaries on the dais, respected past President CA Nihar Jambusaria ji, Speaker of today's program, my council colleague of the dais, C.A. Vijendra Jain, and the convener of this Borivali Central Study Circle, Ravi Soni, and deputy convener, Prateek Maru. Friends, 5 days back we were sitting together and at WIRC in some program, and we were discussing that what program we can do for the members in BCSC jointly with WIRC, and I'm very happy to say that today we have received more than 200 members participation on such a short notice, and let's have a big round of applause for convener and deputy convener. Those have done a lot of great work for this 3 days refresher course on income tax. And believe me friends, whenever we are thinking something new, we are blessed to have such type of people at our fraternity. Those are all the time dedicated, and they want to have more and more energetic sessions to empower all our members at WIRC as well as a study circle. Friends, in 2015, when I joined my practice in my firm, BCSC was the first study circle where I have taken a membership, and today with great pride and deep gratitude and strong sense of responsibility, I am addressing you as a chairman of the largest regional council of ICAI, that is WIRC. Friends, I have learned so many things with the protocols, with the process of BCSC initially, and then definitely at WIRC in last 6 years, I have learned so many things. But I can say BCSC study circle is the highest participated study circle, more energetic and more encouraging for all our members to have more and more discussion on the need of the hour topics. So let's have a big round of applause for all the predecessors of the BCSC. And I'm very fortunate that I am the 75th chairperson of WIRC. Niyar sir, with your blessing, in this year we like to have more and more energetic programs, and we will like to have a celebration of 75th year of legacy of WIRC with the participation with each one of you. Friends, I like to highlight one of the initiative which we have taken, and that is the need of the hour, and that is the intent of our country's leadership also, that we have to aggregate our firm, and we should come out with the more big firms comparison to big four, and that is why we have come out with the concept at WIRC, that is CA Nexus, in which we are inviting the data of all the partners, those are seeking to have a partnership in other big firm, or those are seeking partners in their own firm. So both the way we are inviting data, and very soon we will have the practical approach for that part, and we'll have a physical meeting amongst all to have a collaboration for the partnership, so that a dream of more big firm from the India can be achieved. And in this we will seek participation from each one of you. Friends, we have to understand our role in a different way, because we are in the era where collaboration is a big thing in which we have to participate and we have to synergize ourselves. If we talk about some management lesson, which is very near to my heart also, we all know that who was the great leader in Mahabharata? The god Krishna, who was never in front for the war, but always a strategist, always managing the show from behind. Like that, we also have to believe that whether we are a senior partner or whether we are leading the firm, we should not be in front, but we have to take new energy in the firm in terms of partnership, and then we can run show as a strategist in a better way. That we have to understand for our profession also. Friends, I will not take much of time today. We are at the first day of 3 days refresher course on income tax, but God is always great. Whenever we are seeking the new opportunity in India, we always feel that it is available. In 2017, we had a great opportunity in terms of implementation of GST. Now we are heading towards the Income Tax Act 2025 with more and more expectation to have a great opportunity for our profession. And believe me friends, the way India is growing, we can have a great opportunity in both the side, be it GST, income tax, or an area where capital market is also now emerging for all of us to have a great role. So my request to each one of you that we are taking lots of efforts at WRC for all the three areas, and there are other emerging areas also where we are keeping our programs always as workshops. And as you all know that AI batches is also going on where we need to uplift our skill. And my compliment to ICAI that the way AI course is designed today, our course demand is across the globe. In today's morning also I received call from Hong Kong that whether we can have a collaboration for AI part from WRC or ICAI. That type of demand is there. So let's have a big round of applause for our alma mater also, ICAI, who is taking care of all the new things. I'll not take much of time. Thank you so much for your presence on such a short notice. I want to summarize my communication with 2 lines only, that हौसलों से उड़ान होती है, हौसलों से उड़ान होती है, इरादों से पहचान होती है, इरादों से पहचान होती है, नेतृत्व वही करता है दुनिया में जिसकी सोच महान होती है, जिसकी सोच महान होती है. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you very much, Saurabh sir, for your words of wisdom. Now I would request Ravi to please have a few words.
See, very rightly said, 5 days back we were having a chat that we should have this type of program in Borivali, because since Income Tax Act 2025 it is applicable from 1st April, and there were all members were requesting us, okay, sir, we would have 3 days session on this. So I was discussing with Saurabh, and on day 1 only he has given his permission. You can held any type of program anywhere you wish. You just give us the date and location, we will be there. As soon as I got a green permission from Saurabh sir, I got a help from Avinash Ravani sir. So I would like to thank Avinash Ravani, Nitin Bhuta sir, and all other committee members who have helped us to design this such a big program. So thank you Avinash sir, thank you Nitin Bhuta sir if he is available. And first call I have made to Nihar sir. Whenever, I would say he is the father of our BCSE, fatherly figure, father of the BCSE. So whenever such programs are there, we first call to Nihar sir only. And as soon as the first call I have made, he has given his permission. Yes, he is available, and today he is there with us. So now I request Pratik to give introduction of Nihar sir.
Okay, so Nihar sir doesn't require introduction, but as you all might be knowing, he is the past president of our ICAI. At the same point of time, he has been a founder member for our Borivali Central CP Study Circle. So this is just a 2 lines introduction which I am giving of Nihar sir. I would now request Nihar sir to kindly take the charge of the session.
Good evening, everybody. Chairman of the Western India Regional Council, C.A. Saurabh Ajmera. Regional Council Member, C.A. Vijendra Jain. Convener of the Study Circle, C.A. Ravi Soni. Deputy Convener, Pratik Maru. The speakers for today and hereafter, C.A. Chirag Vadwa, C.A. Ashok Mehta, C.A. Avinash Ravani, tomorrow C.A. Ravi Soni, the past conveners of Borivali Study Circle and all friends. I think after a very long time, this venue has been selected, and it brings back the old memories when very frequently we used to have number of seminars and programs at this venue. So the only drawback is that here all cannot be accommodated. If it is possible to put some extra chairs, I think some members are there and we can accommodate them.
3 to 4% can come in front.
So there are few seats here.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
Now, like last time, even this time in this 3 days series, my role is that of a guest speaker to introduce some of the provisions which were introduced in the Income Tax Act 2025, which are different from what they were in the old act, and to deal with tax jurisprudence, whether there are any changes in the existing scheme of law and how it is going to affect us. I think each one of you will believe that perhaps the biggest exercise that we may be required to do is on our table or near to our chair, keep on left or right side one list of old sections and the comparative new sections, the list of old forms and new forms, and that is how perhaps in the beginning we will be able to know which section to refer. Because we are very much used to, for example, old section 11 for charitable trust, whereas now these provisions are shifted to schedule 3 and a separate chapter. Similarly, the exemption provisions are shifted somewhere else. Fortunately, this comparative chart is available. It is given by the Income Tax Department. It is prepared by our institute. It is prepared by so many publishers of books and journals. So that will make our task easy. The second task or the change in the new law, which we have always observed till the time the income tax bill was presented, is the change in the language, change in the scheme of sections. You know that the provisos have all been deleted, explanations are no longer there, and wherever there were provisos and those provisions are sought to be continued, they are provided either in a separate section or in separate subsection. Another convenience that we will have in reading the new act will be that many times in the old act, when we were searching for some old provision, we used to read a provision halfway down the line, and then we used to come to know that now there is a sunset clause and this provision is no longer applicable. In the new act, those old sections will not be there. The sections which continue, which will be in effect, only will be there. So we will not have to search in the section whether the sunset date has already expired or not, and whether this provision is still prevalent or not. With this, we started reading income tax bill. When it was presented, we discussed so many provisions which were different from the existing provisions. And at that time, we decided and recommended to the institute and many other bodies that representation should be made to the government that so many provisions are not consistent with the intent with which they are provided. So many provisions do not convey the right meaning, and so many provisions require amendment because they have brought in provisions which are not really enforceable. Fortunately, when the Income Tax Act was presented, many of those suggestions were accepted, the corrections were made, but we learnt even at that time that so many provisions require many corrections. In this budget which was presented, we were hopeful that probably it may contain some 10-15 amendments, and the budget or the finance bill, insofar as it relates to direct tax, it will be very small. But again we saw there are 100+ corrections, and wherever we had complaints, many of them are removed. I think today what I will do is, before the regular speaker takes over, there are 2 speakers after me, so I will deal with some of those provisions which require attention of all of us, which were made for us and which were corrected for us. So particularly, if you look at this act from a common man's angle, In charity trust, there were so many provisions which were not appropriate and which required corrections. And in this budget, 3 very important amendments were made to make the corrections to those provisions. I will draw your attention. The speakers will deal with them in greater detail. I think in the budget session we had dealt with all those provisions. Now, this series of 3 lectures or workshops are at the time when the budget is not passed by the Parliament. It is pending, and perhaps the discussion itself will be initiated on 20th of this month. It is expected. And it is possible that before this series is over, the discussions there may not be finalized, and many suggestions which went from here, from the institute, from many other bodies, that may be carried out by the government, and one more session may be required to discuss what are the changes in the final bill that is passed by the government. And we will discuss where the amendments are recommended to the government, which will caution us that after the budget is passed, we need to relook at those sections and try to find out whether amendments are done to those sections. So let me start with some of the provisions which are of day-to-day relevance to all of us. First of all, very important amendment which is made, and where we recommended to the government after the budget was presented that amendment is required. In this finance bill, it is proposed that if a domestic company adopts the new tax regime from the tax year 26-27, that is the year which will start from 1st April 26, then the tax credit which was left unutilized on 31st March 26 will be allowed to be set off against the tax liability from tax year 26-27 up to 15 years. And in any one single year, not more than 25% of the tax credit will be allowed to be set off. If there is more credit, the balance will be carried forward. And here what is inconsistent with the existing provisions? If you look at the current act, it does not allow carry forward of tax credit, MAT credit. If a company adopted new tax regime, say for assessment year 26-27, I am talking about assessment year, that is previous year 25-26, or in earlier year, if the new tax regime is adopted, the old tax credit which was unutilized will lapse. It will not be allowed to be set off in tax year 26-27 or even thereafter. Now this is inconsistent. If a domestic company goes for the new tax regime from tax year 26-27 for the first time, the old MAT credit, unutilized MAT credit will be allowed to be set off. But if a domestic company was wiser earlier and adopted new tax regime in any year prior to tax year 26-27, then the tax credit, MAT credit will lapse. So here a suggestion has been made to the government that this inconsistency should be removed, and even for those domestic companies which adopted new tax regime, even in this year or earlier year, they should be allowed to carry forward and set off the unutilized MAT credit. So this is one provision which requires attention, which should be in radar, because many of your clients, domestic companies, may have unutilized tax credit, and they may have already adopted the new tax regime earlier, and this credit will lapse if this provision is not amended. If they listen to us, amend this provision, then in that case, old tax credit will be allowed to be set off. Another important change is that if any domestic company continues with the old tax regime, MAT will continue to apply under the new Income Tax Act also. But the rate of MAT will be 14% instead of 15%. So this is a good change. It reduces the MAT rate by 1%. Another very important change that we noticed during our discussions in the budget meetings was the provision regarding buyback of shares. And buyback of shares provisions were amended several times. Like at some point of time, the tax was payable by the company when the shares were bought back. Earlier it was treated as dividend. Sometime before it was treated as capital gain. And now again they are bringing back the provision where on buyback of shares, capital gain tax will be payable. Again, there is a differential tax treatment for promoters of the company. And here again, it is pointed out to the government that your apprehensions that in all situations, promoters will try to take benefit of buyback is not correct. There may be genuine buybacks where even promoter may not know that the company will decide to buy back and the promoter may take benefit of the provision. So an exhaustive suggestion was given. Let us see whether this amendment comes in when the provisions are passed. But again, this is one important provision which will draw our attention. If there is no change, then what we had discussed during the budget sessions, it will hold true. Otherwise, it will require discussion again, and we will have to see what concessions are given to the promoters. One more important point is that in buyback of shares, the non-residents will continue to get benefit of tax treaties. It is not that with this budget, buyback will be governed absolutely by the domestic tax provisions even for non-residents. So non-residents can always look for provisions which are in treaty and try to take benefit of it. Now a question has always been raised after this budget that in respect of buyback, there is concessional tax treatment in tax treaties. So will it be denied as in the case of the Tiger Fire Company as done by the Supreme Court? But there is a distinction. The Supreme Court had apprehension that this provision is being misutilized. There is manipulation of facts, and that is why treaty benefit was not given. So where the facts are not manipulated, there is genuine residency in a foreign country, and treaty is in favor of the taxpayer, certainly the taxpayer can take benefit of tax treaty. And this differential tax treatment as per treaty will depend upon non-resident is a resident of which country, because that country's treaty will govern what kind of concession or what kind of tax treatment will prevail. Another important provision which requires attention, and it's very important, like when I was told that mention something about tax jurisprudence, we all had a feeling that on unexplained cash credit, unexplained investments, the old sections 68, 69, where the tax rate was provided at 60% some years back. There was a feeling that if I declare unexplained cash credit myself, why should I pay instead of 30%, 60% tax? And this time, in this budget, they are bringing out the correction that if you declare yourself any income under the head unexplained cash credit, unexplained investment, or unexplained expenditure or hundi loan, then you will be required to pay only 30% tax. Now here what requires our attention is that if these incomes are caught by the assessing officer, then there will be tax at 30%, there will be additional tax and there will be penalty. And the total tax that the taxpayer will pay will be 99%. Whereas today, on unexplained cash credit, if it is caught by the officer, the rate of tax will be 60%, but there will be no penalty for concealment. There will be only additional tax and the total tax liability will be only 84%. Under the new act and after this budget, if unexplained cash credit, investment, expenditure, hundi loans are caught by the officer, then there will be penalty for concealment, and although the base tax rate will be 30%, the total tax including penalty that the taxpayer will have to pay is 99%. If you declare yourself, including surcharge and everything, the tax liability will remain at 39%. I think this is a good step, because if a person has concealed and is required to pay 99% tax, in a way it's okay. But a person who honestly comes forward, declares the income himself or herself, then the tax liability is confined at 39%, which is a good step. Now the government announced before this budget that in the next budget they are going to bring in many provisions for decriminalization. And you can see in the budget, so many penalties are now converted into fines. So many prosecution provisions have been virtually withdrawn. They will be applicable where there is a proof that there was willful default or willful offense committed by the taxpayer. So these are some of the very good steps, because in tax laws, if they are criminalized, and for some of the defaults, if there are criminal actions, and we are aware that for TDS defaults, even when many times genuinely TDS was not paid for financial difficulty, prosecutions were launched by the department, and it was very difficult for taxpayer to go up to tribunal and high court to get prosecution nullified or cancelled. So that will not be the case now. Many of the provisions have been now withdrawn or they have been amended. Coming to charitable trusts, under the new act, again we had a feeling. See, we knew that charitable trust provisions were being amended for last 4 years continuously. Every year the provisions were amended. Very few concessions, but very large number of tightenings happened in the last 4 to 5 years. And we thought the law will settle at that. But when the new act came, 2 or 3 provisions again were harsher than what they were in the existing act. To give you example, one is when a charitable trust, which is now called non-profit organization, NPO under the new act, if an NPO exits its existence, its registration is cancelled under the Trust Act, then it had to pay exit tax, which was very heavy. So in the old act, there was a provision that instead of exiting, if a charitable trust merges with another charitable trust and its activities, its funds, its assets are transferred to the new trust, it will not be regarded as exited trust. And the accretion tax which is required to be paid, such NPOs which merge, such charitable trusts which merge with another existing trust will not be required to pay. Under the new act, even if a NPO, that is charitable trust, merges with another charitable trust, it does not exit, but merges all its assets and activities in existing trust, accretion tax was payable. Now they have realized that this was really not intended, and they are withdrawing and saying that if you merge you will be treated as continued and accretion tax will not apply to you. Another very important provision which we felt was harsh and should not have been brought in, for a charitable trust engaged in general public utility, if it is engaged in any business activity, then under the new act, it was treated as a specified default, and therefore the registration of the trust NPO would be cancelled by the Commissioner of Income Tax Exemption. Again, this was too harsh. Now they have brought in provision that its registration cannot be cancelled. It is not a specified default, but for that part of the income, if higher rate of tax is payable, the NPO will pay. But the consequence of cancellation of registration will not apply anymore. So these are some of the provisions which require our attention so far as charitable trusts are concerned, and we will have to now again register another terminology in our mind. Instead of charitable trust, we will start calling them NPOs going forward. Then NPOs were not allowed to file belated return. If belated return is filed, it was to be treated as null and void, and consequences of registration, cancellation, ATG certificate all would have applied. Now they are saying that NPOs will be allowed to file belated return up to the extended time limit which is applicable for belated return. I think this will also be a big relief, because for smaller NPOs, generally they are not very well organized, and in their cases, filing of return belatedly was happening very regularly. So they will get some relief with this amendment which is being brought in. I think another amendment which was required and which was not in the sight of most of the professionals also, that when any property is compulsorily acquired by the government or by a municipal corporation or by a government authority, then under the Right to Fair Compensation Act, under section 96 of the Right to Fair Compensation Act, exemption was granted. The capital gain or any income that arises on compulsory acquisition of any land or building by the government or government authorities in public interest was not taxable. Now, many of the professionals also did not know, because Right to Fair Compensation Act, everybody is not required to read. Now they are bringing this provision within the Income Tax Act itself. So it will not only draw attention, but it is giving some of the concessions which were not available under the Right to Fair Compensation Act. Like if a land or a building is compulsorily acquired by a government authority specified in the 4th schedule of the Right to Fair Compensation Act, then the income was not eligible for exemption. Now the Income Tax Act, in the finance bill, the way it is provided, once it is acquired by any government authority, whether within 4th schedule to the Right to Fair Compensation Act or not, it will be eligible for complete 100% exemption. So this again is a good change that the new act is bringing in. It is bringing the provision within the framework of the Income Tax Act. It is giving some of the concessions which were not available under the Right to Fair Compensation Act, which is a good step. If we look at now, when it comes to jurisprudence, we know the cases which were delivered by the court on JAO and FAO. Jurisdictional assessing officer and faceless assessment officer. When notice under section 148 was issued by the jurisdictional assessing officer, some of the taxpayers raised the issue that when the assessment is faceless, and a notice is issued by jurisdictional officer, it should be null and void. Some courts have accepted this, some courts did not accept, some tribunals accepted, some tribunals did not. This controversy was going on. Now they are providing in the new act that notice under 148 can be issued by jurisdictional assessing officer, but once the notice is issued, the assessment proceedings are required to be completed by faceless assessments unit. So the issue of notice cannot be challenged, its jurisdiction cannot be challenged. Now this goes in a way against the taxpayers, as against many decisions which were there in favor, but finally it sets at rest a controversy which created uncertainty. Now there will be certainty. If a notice is received from jurisdictional officer, he will have to respond to it and finally challenge it only if the assessment proceedings are continued by the jurisdictional officer. Otherwise, it has to shift to faceless assessment unit. For undisclosed assets, half-hearted concessions are given. If you declare, penalties can be avoided. But again, it's a step in good direction. Further concessions are expected. Some representations have been made. So again, this is a provision which you keep under your watch. There are many who have not disclosed foreign assets, and they are averse to disclose on the fear that heavy penalty will be payable. But if you are covered by the concessions which are offered, then you can venture into declaring these assets and get rid of penalties in the future years. Again, another very good step, if we sum up all these, that after a notice is issued to you, you are not supposed to file updated income tax return. Now in the finance bill, there is a proposal, and we hope it will get through, that even after the issue of notice under section 148, if you want to update the return, you are allowed to update, and you can avoid penalties on the ground that some of the incomes were not disclosed knowingly. Now again, we may not feel very good with this amendment, and we have challenged it in the past that whenever an assessment order, penalty order or any other order came to us without DIN, we challenge that it is not a valid assessment order and it should be scrapped. So some of the tribunals have done this, and the government realizes that in many of the orders, DIN was not mentioned out of oversight. It was already created. It was in the record of the department, but it was not mentioned out of oversight. So now they are providing that if DIN was already created, only there was a procedural lapse in not mentioning it on the assessment order, the assessment order will not become invalid just for want of DIN on the face of the assessment order. Now here again, let us see what amendment comes in. DIN is required to be quoted on every document that comes to you, including notice, including penalty notice, including penalty order. But they are saying that if DIN is not mentioned due to oversight, but there is a record which shows it was created, then assessment order will be treated as valid. So again, there will be some who can argue that this does not apply to penalty order or notices, and on them, if DIN is not quoted, we can still argue that they are invalid. I think it will be corrected when the budget is finally passed. And I think some of the penalty proceedings, which almost all penalty proceedings were initiated separately. The assessment order was passed, and after that penalty proceedings were initiated. Now they are providing that penalty proceedings will be required to be initiated along with the assessment order itself. So the separate process of initiating penalty proceedings is not to be done. I think in a way it is good. In one go, you know in the assessment order what litigation you have to create, what replies you have to give, and if there is a so-called notice, the replies may be given in response to the assessment order itself. Friends, these were some of the provisions which I thought I will just mention, that they are important. Some of them may get amended, and maybe in one single session, whatever amendments come to the provisions which are proposed in the finance bill, one session may thereafter be required if by the time you wind up all 3 sessions, the budget is not finally passed. So with this, I compliment again the study circle for having this series at the right time, because on 1st April the new tax year will start, the new law will apply, and we need to be equipped with the new provisions as early as possible and as sooner as possible. So wherever planning is required, one can plan for the future. So with this, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I think I should leave enough time for the regular speakers to take up the topic and deal with the subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Niyar sir. Without taking much of your time, I would introduce second speaker of the session, CA Chirag Vadva. I would first request to please, he is a qualified chartered accountant possessing law degree as well, and has varied diversified experience in the verticals of direct taxation, international taxation, indirect tax, FEMA, corporate law. He is currently serving Vice Chairman of Direct Tax Committee of Chamber of Tax Consultant and Core Committee member of BCAS, Bombay Chartered Accountant Society. He has been regularly contributing in various publications and also has been speakers at various forums. With this brief introduction, I would request our WRC Chairman to please offer a memento. We welcome our speaker. I would request to please take the charge of session. अच्छा नीचे रख देंगे खाली पॉइंट्स માટે ના ના ખાલી પોઈન્ટર્સ માટે મારી સ્ક્રીન પ્રેઝન્ટ ના ના ના
Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be amongst everyone around over here. Sharing dice with Nihar Bhai is of course a pleasure.